Yuqiu Ci, who no longer believes in love and has been dumped, deceived, or raised by his ex-girlfriends, has been reborn, returning to his college days once again. I'm sorry, I thought last night was just a dream. You have already taken my body, yet you still want to be my girlfriend. Are you taking advantage of all the good things? Tisk, college life is really good. Keywords of the novel. Reborn me, I am not a male god. No pop-ups, reborn me, I am not a male god. Complete download of TXT, reborn me, I am not a male god. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The place where dreams start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The place where dreams start. On Saturday evening in 2021, it's over 10 o'clock. There are still several overtime workers in the office of a certain group department. After finishing his work, Su Wenrun leaned back in the chair and stretched lazily. He turned around and glanced at Yuqiu Ci, the male lead, then quietly ran to the position next to him. What's wrong? Yuqiu Ci tilted his head and smiled. It's nothing, tired, take a break. Su Wenrun lay on the table and smiled, his watery eyes scanning the other two colleagues, muttering, the four of us are really tough. So tired. Are you tired? Yuqiu Ci took a deep breath and felt a bit uncomfortable in his chest these past few days. However, he didn't mean to say anything, but instead smiled and said, recently, there has been a colleague who died suddenly in our company. I won't be the next one, right? Pooh, pooh, pooh. Don't talk nonsense. Su Wenrun spat at him and directly changed the topic. We should be able to finish work at 9 o'clock tomorrow weekend. Let's go watch a movie then. I'm afraid not, I have a private event with a beautiful lady tomorrow night. Yuqiu Ci squeezed her eyes. Su Wenrun couldn't help but give him a cold glance and said, it was last week that I asked you to help her fix her computer, and the next morning I asked you to come back with your waist. I'll reiterate it again. Yuqiu Ci interrupted her words, I accidentally knocked my waist on the head of her bed. My body is definitely fine. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Is it really her? No, it's not. That's the girl who called you the day before yesterday to go see a movie. There were 3 days ago, which one do you mean? Su Wenrun rolled his eyes and said, you're really doing evil. How come they haven't killed you yet? Yuqiu Ci smiled but remained silent. Su Wenrun didn't say much anymore. Seeing him constantly writing and drawing on paper, he curiously leaned over and then smiled, you guy, you're actually reading. Our college entrance examination paper that year. Well, wasn't it the college entrance examination a few days ago? Suddenly, I wanted to do our college entrance examination questions again that year. I feel very comfortable and relaxed when doing these questions. The first time I heard that doing test papers is for relaxation. If you had this heart back then, could you not have been admitted to Tsinghua University? Yuqiu Ci looked at the reference answer and calculated the answer to the last major math question. She put down her pen and raised her eyebrows with a smile, saying, now if I want to go back to the year of the college entrance examination, I really need to go to Tsinghua. Unfortunately, I can't come back. Su Wenrun joked with a smile. But even if I go back and get admitted to Tsinghua University, I won't go. Where are you going then? Go to your school, choose your major, and we'll be classmates in the next life. Su Wenrun smiled uncontrollably and said, are you thinking that soaking me should be done as soon as possible? Of course not. Yuqiu Ci smiled and shook her head. I won't soak you, and I don't want to fall in love with you because I never have a good ending when I'm in love. Ha ha ha. When it comes to the love history of Yuqiu Ci, Su Wenrun wants to laugh. Although this guy has been in love many times, most of the endings are very regrettable. I have been kicked, greened, and cheated. I was also cheated by the mistress. The woman concealed the fact that she had a partner and fell in love with him, but was discovered by the man. Yuqiu Ci was inexplicably forced to participate in a real-person PK. There was another time when I was even more ruthless than being a mistress. I met an old sea king, and I don't know how many boyfriends she had. Anyway, Yuqiu Ci was one after another approached by 3 men to compete with real people. Others spend money on dating, while others spend their lives on dating. So Yuqiu Ci has become so promiscuous now that she cannot get rid of these top-notch ex-girlfriends. Now he knows his mistake and changes it, resolutely no longer seriously dating, just play anyway. As for getting married, in the future, we may just find an honest person to take over. I suddenly remembered something. Yuqiu Ci paused for a moment, with a smile at the corner of her eye. Back in high school, there was a female classmate who promised to confess her love to me as soon as I got into Tsinghua University. Did you think I would really go back and ruin her? Su Wenrun couldn't help but laugh and said, "It's like telling other men that if you go pick a star in the sky, I'll be your girlfriend. Haha. As soon as you improve, I'm not happy anymore." Su Wenrun pouted. However, Yuqiu Ci laughed even more happily. She had a first love in high school. Although Yuqiu Ci didn't think it was love at all, she thought it was. In short, she shyly established a relationship with a male classmate in high school. However, it only lasted for 3 days, and the early love story was somehow discovered by my parents. The second elder was furious on the spot, scolded her fiercely, and then forcibly processed the transfer procedures for her, without any room for negotiation. Su Wenrun left school crying. Since then, she took a gamble in her heart. If you don't let me fall in love, then I won't talk anymore. She really did it. Even though there have been countless pursuers around her in the past decade or so, and even if her parents try to persuade her, she is almost kneeling down. At the age of 35 this year, she has never been in a relationship again and has now decided not to get married. I really sympathize with you, Su Wenrun joked while holding on to his greasy chin. There are so many women who have been brought to bed, but none of them truly treat you. Yuqiu Ci smiled and glanced at her. People who treat me sincerely may not necessarily have to be taken to bed. Ha! Su Wenrun knew he was talking about her and couldn't help but have a beautiful and bright smile on his face. Speaking of which, I sympathize with you too. You're 35 years old and haven't experienced the joy of being a woman yet. Hee hee. Su Wenrun sneered and deliberately shook his slender 5 fingers in front of him. Do you think my fingers are flexible? Yuqiu Ci fell silent for a moment and showed her fingers. Actually, my fingers are longer than yours. What's the use of growing up? I prefer something powerful, Su Wenrun snorted. My hands must be quite powerful. Then I'll have to borrow your hands tonight. Su Wenrun raised her eyebrows and looked at her with autumn water in her eyes. After all, I've piled up more than 20 packages downstairs these past few days. It's really impossible for me to carry them alone. 20 or so. Do you understand now? Su Wenrun chuckled and said, "This is the joy of being a woman." Yuqiu Ci. Alright, stop talking. Hurry up and work. Su Wenrun stood up and rubbed his shoulder with a smile. We should be able to finish work at midnight today. Aha. Su Wenrun nodded and ran back to his workstation. Yuqiu Ci also put away the math test paper that had already been studied and started working. After more than an hour, the harmonious keyboard sound in the office was interrupted with a bang. Su Wenrun and 2 colleagues instinctively turned around and saw Yuqiu Ci lying motionless on their desk. Su Wenrun's heart was filled with a bad premonition, and he quickly ran to his side anxiously shouting. Yuqiu Ci suspected that his mouth was wide open, and just as he finished speaking, he suddenly died of overtime. What's even more unexpected is that this death actually returned to the past. In front of me is a familiar yet unfamiliar bedroom that I have lived in for over a decade. There is a cassette recorder by the bedside. When I told my dad I wanted to use it to practice English listening, in fact, I mostly used it to listen to music. There is a book by my pillow called 100 Years of Solitude that I haven't finished reading in 3 years of high school, and a poster of SHE with a smiling face hanging on the wall, dong dong dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside, and the voice of my father came from the crack in the door. Hurry up and have breakfast. Don't be late for the college entrance examination today. Yuqiu Ci was suddenly struck by lightning. Nima, am I really going to Tsinghua? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Treasure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Treasure. Don't be nervous, and don't put pressure on yourself, said Yu Guofeng softly at the dinner table. Just play to your normal level. If you can get into a university, I'll buy you meat for a week in a row. What should I buy if I get admitted to Tsinghua University? Dad chuckled and said, you better hurry up and eat. Obviously, he doesn't believe it, which is also normal. There is no mother at home because my parents divorced a few years ago. She married a wealthy man in the city who owned a factory. She remarried and took her sister with her. Later that year, after graduating from college, my mother came back and wanted to remarry my father. However, within 2 years, my mother filed for divorce again and left home. This is also one of the reasons why later Yuqiu Ci no longer wanted to get married. After all, her parents' marriage set a bad example for her. He also has an older brother who went to another city before graduating from high school and is currently working on a construction site. Initially, due to my father's waist injury, he couldn't do heavy work and could only do some low-paying miscellaneous work for others. In addition, my father often takes medicine and cannot afford to send the 2 brothers to school. In the end, his older brother, who did not have poor academic performance, dropped out of school and went to work, allowing Yuqiu Ci to continue his studies. At present, Yuqiu Ci's biggest concern is still his brother who works on the construction site. In October, after the start of his freshman year, he injured his leg on the construction site and suffered a 3rd-level disability. This matter cannot be repeated in this lifetime, nor can it be made so difficult for him anymore. I need to earn a bucket of gold now after breakfast, bring your stationery. Yuqiu Ci stepped onto the already painted bicycle and freely shuttled through the old alleys. After graduating from high school for more than a decade, I rarely come back here again. Now, looking at the familiar and unfamiliar scenery in front of me, I cannot help but feel very nostalgic. Especially the buildings that were lost and returned more than a decade later, he felt like a dream. The first Chinese exam. After receiving the exam paper, Yuqiu Ci breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was the set of papers that I had already researched, and everything remained unchanged. It's not easy to get a high score in Chinese, but in this exam, Yuqiu Ci is still confident in getting around 130 points. At that time, I even studied a few sample essays, but now I naturally have them at my fingertips. The following 2 days. As Yuqiu Ci had originally anticipated, he had completed all the exam papers for the subjects without making any mistakes. The next day. After finishing the last English exam, Yuqiu breathed a sigh of relief as he put down his pen. In fact, his English grammar level is already good now, and due to work reasons, he often reads a lot of English materials. Moreover, since I have already made this paper roll before, it is naturally not very difficult now. In just over an hour, Yuqiu Ci finished this exam paper. However, it is definitely not possible to be entirely correct. Setting aside the composition, individual subjective questions may inevitably have memory biases. Yuqiu Ci was not in a hurry to submit his paper, but he didn't want to squeeze out the exam room with his classmates, so he left 3 minutes early. There are many expectant parents waiting outside the school. As soon as Yuqiu Ci appeared, it immediately became their focus. Even though it was only 3 minutes early to leave the exam room, it was also the brightest star. "Hello classmate," a journalist lady greeted me with a smile. "May I ask if we can conduct some simple interviews with you?" Come on. How do you feel about the difficulty of the exam paper? Yuqiu scratched her temples and said, well. Actually, I don't think it's difficult, but maybe I'm lucky. How to say it? I didn't take most of the exams that I didn't know, and I knew most of the content I got. I can only say that I was lucky. The reporter fell silent for a moment. Listen, is this speaking in human language? I used to think that by performing exceptionally well, I could score over 600 points, but now I feel like it's really just over 600 points. You. The reporter was a bit overwhelmed by him. You performed exceptionally well by over 600 points. Is the question now simple or just over 600 points? Is there a difference between 610 and 690? Oh. The reporter suddenly smiled and said, since you did so well in the exam, I see why you don't seem very happy. Because I have difficulty choosing, I'm torn between going to Tsinghua University or Peking University. Yuqiu Ci frowned and said, or maybe I won't go at all. Reporter. I'm starting to stop talking anymore. If it were in 2020, Yuqiu Ci may become an internet celebrity due to this interview. However, this is 2004, and the internet is far from developed, so it cannot turn out anything. As the exam ended, more and more students came out, and many people looked curiously towards this side. Yuqiu Ci glanced at a girl. The two of them met in gaze, and the girl suddenly turned her gaze away, feeling a bit lost, and then wanted to run away. Sorry, I have something else to do, Yuqiu Ci told the reporter. Good classmate, thank you. After setting aside the reporter, Yuqiu Ci quickly followed the girl and said, Lin Zhuiyue, I want to discuss with you whether we can change our bet. She was the girl who once said that as long as Yuqiu Ci got into Tsinghua University, she would be his girlfriend. Lin Zhuiyue hesitated a bit and turned back. On the day of the college entrance examination, she still wore a blue school uniform, tied a ponytail, and had a delicate melon seed face without any makeup, pure and lovely. Especially those big eyes, as clear and bright as gemstones, were incredibly beautiful. Otherwise they would not have confessed to her if they were too beautiful. Yuqiu Ci, we were really not suitable for dating in high school. Lin Zhuiyue whispered. I know, Yuqiu smiled and said, that's why I asked you to make a change. How to make changes? Even if I get admitted to Tsinghua University, don't agree to my confession, Yuqiu Ci pouted and looked up at the sky. Otherwise, I always feel like I'm at a disadvantage. Lin Zhuiyue felt that Yuqiu Ci was playing tricks on herself because she knew she couldn't get into Tsinghua University. Actually, everyone thinks so. However, Lin Zhuiyue did not tease him on this topic. After thinking for a moment, she said seriously, you worked so hard in the next 3 months. Anyway, you should have done well in the exam. Anyway, it must be better than you. Lin Zhuiyue opened her mouth and blushed, unsure of how to take it. From today on, we may go our separate ways and never see each other again. Yuqiu Ci lightly patted her left chest and said, I sincerely wish you a happy and safe future. By the way, I wish you a happy new year in advance. Lin Zhuiyue stood in the same spot, watching Yuqiu Ci turn around and push her bike, seemingly graceful in her figure. After pausing for a moment, Lin Zhuiyue quickly caught up and walked side by side with him, saying, Yuqiu Ci, I also hope you will be happy in the future. Thank you. Yuqiu Ci extended her hand and said, let's draw a hook. Lin Zhuiyue hesitated for a moment before reaching out her tender white hand, which was then held by Yuqiu Ci's big hand. Lin Zhuiyue was momentarily confused, wasn't it the agreed hook? Yuqiu Ci held her hand and shook it up and down with a false sense of sincerity, but her face was impeccable. Cherish it. Jeune. Cherish. Lin Zhuiyue stared blankly at him, not even knowing how she muttered these 2 words. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Porn Abandonment. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 3 Porn Abandonment. Farewell to Lin Zhuiyue. Yuqiu Ci rode his bike and arrived at the nearby internet cafe. He still remembers Su Wenruan's QQ and wants to try adding her to see if there is a response. Back then, he and Su Wenruan's university were neighbors. He was at Changning University and she was at East China University of Science and Technology. The two schools were face-to-face. During her college years, Yuqiu Ci often ran towards her school, but during their time there was no interaction between the two and they didn't know each other at that time. Until later, the two accidentally became colleagues. Anyway, with the face-to-face relationship between their alma mater, there is a natural sense of familiarity when the two meet for the first time. Another important reason is that Yuqiu Ci only treated her as a good friend and didn't want to get her to bed. After becoming colleagues, the two gradually became close friends who were almost inseparable. They went shopping, watched movies, and worked out together anyway. Besides not having sex with her, we do everything else. I don't do anything except sleep with other women. This is the emotional life of Yuqiu Ci in the later years. The relationship between two people is probably the so-called confidant, which is also a pure male-female relationship that many people do not believe in. Thinking of these, Yuqiu Ci couldn't help but be very curious. What would 18-year-old Su Wenruan look like? Probably because the college entrance examination has just ended, the internet cafes are full, mixed with some underage kids. The internet cafe owner is not worried either. If someone conducts a surprise inspection, he will receive a message in advance and just ask the little kid to go out quickly. Holding the number plate and waiting for half an hour, Yuqiu Ci paid for the ride. Although it has been over a decade, he still remembers the initial QQ password because it was too silly. Woni 5201314. Upon seeing QQ's ID, Yuqiu Ci felt another wave of liver ache. Pori, abandoning, DAI. With a strong sense of shame, Yuqiu Ci quickly changed his name. After entering Su Wenruan's QQ, Yuqiu Ci took a deep breath and nervously clicked on search. Sure enough, there was this QQ, and Yuqiu Ci quickly clicked on her profile. The province and city were all addresses of Su Wenruan. Yuqiu Ci breathed a sigh of relief. It was her. Looking at this familiar set of numbers, I inexplicably felt a little moved. Just looking at her name, Forget Love Again, Yuqiu's lyrics were ruined. However, at this moment, she must have been forced to transfer schools and separate from her first love. At this moment, her mentality is really forgetting about love. Having added Su Wenruan's friend, Yuqiu Ci didn't expect her to return immediately. After all, in this era, students almost always use computers to go to QQ. For some high school students at this time, the QQ in their hands may still be a decoration, and it is normal for them to have less than once in 3 to 5 months. So, it's possible that both of them met in college, and Su Wenruan hasn't replied to his QQ messages yet. Yuqiu Ci, I really don't understand why Lin Zhuiyue chose you in the end. Suddenly, a boy's unwilling voice came from beside him. Yuqiu Ci turned her head and gradually came up with information about the boy in her mind. His name is Wei Wen, which is quite a coincidence. He and I were still college alumni back then. This guy is also a suitor of Lin Zhuiyue, so their relationship is a bit like a romantic rival. You said Lin Zhuiyue chose me. Yuqiu Ci was very puzzled. Don't think I don't know. A few days ago, she asked you which school you want to apply to, clearly wanting to go to Changning University with you. Wei Wen glared at Yuqiu Ci angrily. I am stronger in learning than you, have a better personality than you, and look. Cough, I don't understand where I am inferior to you. You already understand where it's not as good as me. Wei Wen. Yuqiu Ci turned around and didn't pay any attention to him. After carefully recalling it, he finally understood what Wei Wen was referring to. About a week ago, Lin Zhuiyue did ask him what university he most wanted to apply for. However, for the reborn Yuqiu Ci, that was already more than a decade ago. At that time, Yuqiu Ci's answer was that he later went to Changning University. At that time, Yuqiu Ci thought she wanted to enroll in the same university as herself and had been having fun for a long time. Later on, I realized that Lin Zhuiyue was doing this to deliberately avoid his school. It is obvious that Wei Wen also misunderstood back then. He thought that Lin Zhuiyue was going to Changning University, so he also followed suit. As a result, Lin Zhuiyue didn't even come, and he became alumni with Yuqiu Ci. Neither of them got Lin Zhuiyue, but they got each other. But back then, when they met at school, they would just blow their beards and curse, leaving no good impression. Yuqiu Ci pursed his lips and said, "She won't even come to Changning. Don't think about it." "Where is she going?" Wei Wen quickly asked. "How do I know?" Actually, Yuqiu Ci is very clear in her heart, but she wouldn't tell this guy either. "You think I'm stupid?" Wei Wen "Don't think I don't know. You're afraid of me Changning, so I decided to go ahead." Yuqiu Ci ignored him and turned off the computer, got off the machine, and left. He doesn't want to go to the same school as this guy anymore, but if he insists on coming, he will have to exert more force on him than in his previous life. It's over 6 o'clock in the evening. Lin Zhuiyue's mother has prepared a sumptuous table of dishes. Some old black and white televisions are broadcasting news about the college entrance examination from the county television station. Lin Zhuiyue has no interest in this type of TV news and keeps glancing at it. "Hello classmate, may I ask if we can conduct a brief interview with you?" It's possible." Lin Zhuiyue, who caught sight of this scene, suddenly froze and forgot to chew the food in her mouth. Surprisingly, it's a metaphor for autumn. When I left the exam room, I saw that he seemed to have been interviewed by reporters, but I didn't expect he would still be on TV. Actually, I don't think it's difficult, but maybe I'm lucky. I didn't take any exams that I didn't know, and I knew most of the content I got. Puff. Cough cough cough. Is Lin Zhuiyue still speaking human language when the food in her mouth sprayed directly onto the ground? What's going on? Mom anxiously patted her back and said, "Eat slowly." Lin Zhuiyue coughed for half a day before picking up a water cup to rinse her mouth. "Because I have a bit of a choice disorder," Yuqiu Ci frowned and looked very distressed. "I'm torn between going to Tsinghua or Peking University. Or maybe I won't go at all." Puff. The water she just drank in her mouth was sprayed onto the ground by her again. Cough cough cough. Dad also coughed a few times at Yuqiu Ci's words. This kid talks as if Tsinghua and Peking University are owned by his family. Mom also chuckled and shook her head. This child is really not humble at all. Even if he is a top student, he dare not say he can get into Tsinghua and Peking University 100%. When you go to college in the future, you will eventually find a partner, but you must not find such a person. Lin Zhuiyue rubbed her perky nose and decided to lower her head to eat. Because of this news, Yuqiu Ci became famous among those who knew him. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The First Tsinghua University. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter for the First Tsinghua University. It has been passed down from generation to generation, and almost all relatives, friends, and classmates know that the news on Yuqiu's lyrics says he can take the entrance exam to Tsinghua University in Peking University. Thanks to the underdeveloped communication methods at this time, his phone would have been bombarded by everyone else long ago. When Dad Yu Guofeng learned about this from his neighbors, he didn't know what to say. A son's confidence is naturally a good thing, but he always feels that this confidence is somewhat elusive, and it turns into arrogance. When Yu Guofeng asked Yuqiu Ci about this matter at home, he just scratched his head and was a bit confused. "They showed me on TV without my consent. Is this appropriate?" Yu Guofeng is speechless. The next day, Yuqiu Ci didn't go out and nestled in his room, reading the book, 100 Years of Solitude, that he had never finished reading in his previous life. Yu Guofeng is different. When he goes out, he is ridiculed by his neighbors, and when he works at a restaurant, he is also ridiculed by everyone. Old Yu, I heard that your son has been admitted to Tsinghua University. Being admitted to Tsinghua University is not allowed to set up a banquet to celebrate. Whenever this happens, Yuqiu smiles and waves his hand, feeling somewhat helpless. Although some people may carry malicious sarcasm, his kind personality cannot be strongly refuted. Who made my son really boast about this nonsense? When he returned home at night, Yuqiu's expression on the road was somewhat solemn. When passing by a small shop, Yuqiu pondered for a moment before finally walking over to pick up the phone and dialed a number. Hey, who are you? A woman's voice across from her was quite pleasant but also casual. My son is going to college soon, and I don't have enough money on hand. The woman across from her remained silent for a while before saying, then you can ask your son to come and see me, and I'll give him the money. By the way, I'll have him admit his mistake. Admit your mistake. Where did your son go wrong? Isn't it a mistake to talk big? I don't even mind talking about you. Look at my son who was educated by you and boasted on TV about Tsinghua University and Peking University being his choice. Do you believe that? People who know my relationship with him now make fun of me when they see me, which makes my head ache. Can he get into Tsinghua University? I just... Pop. Yuqiu hung up the phone and paid to go home. Pushing open the door, Yuqiu Ci's laughter came from the room. Dad is back. Come and taste my craft. Yuqiu's gloomy face had already shown a smile. How come I didn't know you could cook? You even thought our aroma was from a neighbor's house. Yesterday I looked up some recipes at the internet cafe, and today I tried them, but I feel like... Yuqiu Ci said with a smile, my talent for cooking seems really high. Did you go to the internet cafe? Yuqiu frowned slightly, his focus clearly different, but then he slowed down and said, it's okay to go and play after the college entrance examination, but there are still fewer places to go to the internet cafe. Yuqiu Ci nodded and continued to refer to it, saying that the older generation always dislikes internet cafes. Not to mention it, I need to taste my son's craft. Yuqiu went to wash his hands eagerly and casually said, don't stay at home all the time during your vacation. Go play with your classmates and friends. Don't mention it. Yuqiu Ci waved his hand and said, as soon as I went out, they all made fun of me. Who wants you to brag to others? Yuqiu said angrily, so can we just go to Tsinghua? Dad, don't talk about me anymore. Yuqiu smiled and said, all right. Hurry up and eat. Delicious. Yuqiu Ci chuckled and said, that's my natural talent for cooking. The father and son chatted for a while, and after hesitating for a while, Yuqiu finally talked about today's matter. Your college entrance examination has also ended. Do you want to go see your mother? Yuqiu Ci was taken aback for a moment. He said the same thing after the college entrance examination that year. At that time, Yuqiu didn't think too much about the lyrics and thought it was okay to go and take a look, so he went. Later on, he found out that he had to go see his mother in person, which was why she was willing to pay the tuition fee. I've been to see her 3 times this year, and she hasn't even come to see us once. Forget it. I won't go. Yuqiu remained silent. Yuqiu Ci continued, if you're worried about tuition fees, Dad, just relax. I have a solution to this. What do you have in mind? Yuqiu Ci smiled and said, you can rest assured. In the blink of an eye, time has arrived on the day when the scores for the college entrance examination will come down. At noon, Yuqiu Ci got on her bike and prepared to go to the public phone at the convenience store to check her score. Upon arrival, it was discovered that many students had settled in the small shop, including Lin Zhuiyue. You can start checking your grades at 12 o'clock, and everyone is crowded together. Oh, everyone, quickly give way. Tsinghua students are here. Welcome, warm welcome. A classmate saw Yuqiu's lyrics and laughed loudly, causing people around to burst into laughter. Having finished checking her scores, Lin Zhuiyue, who was about to leave, stopped and wanted to see Yuqiu Ci's college entrance exam scores. Yuqiu Ci ignored these people and turned to ask Lin Zhuiyue, "Don't you have a phone at home? Why are you still here?" "I'm afraid my score may not be ideal, so I'll go out and check it myself first. I really have a bottom line in my heart." Lin Zhuiyue's expression seemed calm, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. It can be seen that she is quite satisfied with her grades at the moment. Yuqiu Ci nodded and didn't speak again. "Everyone, let's give way and let our Tsinghua students check their scores first," someone next to them joked. Everyone gave face and let Yuqiu Ci come first. Yuqiu Ci felt at ease without queuing and picked up the phone directly. After a while, Yuqiu Ci hung up the phone and asked with a confused expression in the eyes of others who were either looking forward to or joking, "Can I attend Tsinghua University this year with a score of 692? Damn it. Still blowing. If you can take the 692 exam, I'll eat this phone raw." Lin Zhuiyue stared blankly at Yuqiu Ci and then chuckled softly, "Is the score enough for your previous ideal Changning University? 1,000,000,000 more points." "That's enough," Lin Zhuiyue smiled and said, "I still want to congratulate you." A boy next to him slowly spoke up, "I just quietly eavesdropped on the phone, he really scored 692 points. The scene was silent for several seconds. Then someone burst out laughing and said, "You kid wants to deceive us with him, right? How about we make a bet?" Yuqiu Ci smiled and looked at him. "Just bet on me if it's 692 points. The bet is arbitrary. Do you dare?" Faced with Yuqiu Ci's provocation, everyone looked left and right, but no one dared to refute it. "No way. Does our school really have a Tsinghua student? If this is true, it's not our school, it seems like the first Tsinghua University in our dilapidated county town. Yuqiu Ci, don't scare me. In that case, Lin Zhuiyue, don't you have to be his girlfriend? Ahahaha. Together. Everyone changed their faces quickly, seamlessly transitioning from questioning to surprise, and then to coaxing. Lin Zhuiyue's small face involuntarily turned red, and she lowered her head and pursed her lips, pushing her bicycle and fleeing into the wilderness. Yuqiu Ci didn't embarrass her in front of so many people, only feeling that her reaction at this moment was very funny. Stepping onto the bicycle, Yuqiu Ci also left the small shop, and the voices of the students behind him became louder. Yuqiu Ci. As we passed a corner, the sound of Lin Zhuiyue suddenly came from our side. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Willfulness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Willfulness. Yuqiu Ci stopped and turned around, saying, "Why are you still here? You did really well in the exam." "I can't do without your credit," Yuqiu Ci smiled and said, "If it weren't for you motivating me with Tsinghua University, I wouldn't have worked so hard in the last few months." Lin Zhuiyue blushed and gave a dry laugh, taking small steps with shyness as she moved towards him. There were too many people there just now. I'm sorry, but this matter. After all, it was me who. You don't have to say anything, Yuqiu Ci said, looking at her twisted expression. I know what you're trying to say. After all, it's a promise you boasted about yourself. If you don't recognize it directly, you'll feel embarrassed and lose face. But as my girlfriend, you're not willing, so I've come up with a compromise for you. What's the solution? You pout and give me a kiss, this matter is over. Lin Zhuiyue suddenly blushed, stomped her feet hard, glared at him with bright eyes, and rode away on her bicycle. The laughter of Yuqiu Ci couldn't help but spill into the air. Lin Zhuiyue arrived at the school all the way and saw a banner hanging at the entrance. Congratulations to Yuqiu Ci from our school for achieving excellent results with a score of 692, ranking first in the city and 8th in the province. Standing under the banner, Lin Zhuiyue felt a bit dazed, feeling that the distance between her and Yuqiu Ci had suddenly widened. When I said that, I didn't want him to delay his studies and hoped he would do better in the college entrance examination, but I didn't expect him to be so good. The exclamations and discussions of the classmates around him kept coming one after another, and everyone felt that his words on the news were bragging, but everyone was slapped in the face. If it weren't for knowing his qualifications and inability to take the wrong path, I really suspect this kid is cheating. However, Yuqiu Ci did not intend to go to Tsinghua University. He was well aware of how much he weighed, and the ink in his stomach was not enough to support his studies at Tsinghua University. Moreover, he did not expect that he would continue to study hard in university and also make a living at Tsinghua University. Secondly, as a reborn individual, understanding the historical process of the past decade or so, relatively speaking, my dependence on Tsinghua University is not so great. If this is still in my previous life, no one can stop me from going to Tsinghua University. Last but not least, Yuqiu Ci wanted to find Su Wenrun, who was 18 years old. Before her sudden death, she jokingly promised to go to her place in the 985 university, which ranked around 20 in the country, if she had some drama skills. What? Are you going to East China University of Science and Technology? The voice of the homeroom teacher on the phone was extremely puzzled. Although this is a good 985 school, you can go to Tsinghua University with this score this year. My family's situation is a bit difficult. If we go there, we will definitely receive a full prize, and Tsinghua University will definitely not receive a full prize. Yuqiu Ci casually made an excuse. You are the first person in the city this year, and the first person in the history of our small county to be admitted to the top 10 in the province. With such a record-breaking score, the school has decided to reward you. Are you still worried about the money? But Tsinghua still doesn't give the full prize. The homeroom teacher scratched her scalp hard and took a deep breath. I don't think it's because of money, kid. Yuqiu Ci smiled and said, how could it be? As a layman, I love money. Let me give you some information. The homeroom teacher's voice instinctively lowered, and suddenly became a bit gossipy. Lin Zhuiyue went to Beijing. Are you really not going? I don't know how many boys will be chasing her in college. Can you rest assured that you're not in Beijing? Yuqiu Ci is a bit funny. How could a homeroom teacher use female classmates to seduce male classmates? To be honest, Yuqiu Ci sighed lightly. I just didn't want to go to Shanghai with her in the same city. Cough cough. Actually, I lied to you. She went to Shanghai and enrolled in Chongqing University, really. Then I have to go to East China University of Science and Technology, across from Chongqing Gate. It's after 6 in the evening. Yuqiu Ci not only appeared on the news of the county TV station, but also on the city TV station to gain popularity. On June 8, the classmate who was interviewed by our Taiwan reporter and threatened to be selected by him in the north really achieved a good score of 692 points, ranking first in the city. This news was like a small bomb, instantly detonating the person in front of the TV. Oh my! This young man can really go to Tsinghua. This sentence is a sudden exclamation from many people in front of the TV. If it were just a Tsinghua student from the county, although it could be considered news, it wouldn't have caused such a big uproar. But coupled with Yuqiu Ci's arrogant attitude during her first interview. Thinking about the scene where his words were ridiculed and looked down upon by everyone at that time, and looking at the flip of the current scene, it is full of drama. Nowadays, Yuqiu Ci has become the term other people's children, in the mouths of parents. Lin Zhuiyue's mother looked admiringly at Yuqiu Ci on the TV and said, "Yeah, if you want to find a boyfriend in the future, you can use this young man as a template." Lin Zhuiyue rolled her eyes and said last time that she couldn't find someone like this to be her boyfriend. Mom, do you just hope that I fall in love? Lin Zhuiyue said angrily. Mom actually hopes that you don't fall in love in college, so as not to be deceived by bad kids. Lin Mom frowned and said, but is that possible? When you're a few hundred kilometers away from home, you really need a young man you like. Can I still manage you? It makes sense, it really can't be controlled anymore. Yuqiu Ci at the dinner table worked hard for a while to finally persuade his father to apply to East China University of Science and Technology. What kind of science and technology university are you? Are you really good? Yu Guofeng asked inexplicably. Rank around 20 nationwide. The top 20. Dong dong dong. Yu Guofeng was about to speak when he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Yuqiu Ci stood up and opened the door. Son. Oh my dear son. The woman with a charming face outside the door hugged Yuqiu Ci into her arms, her tone filled with an indescribable excitement. I knew my son had skills. He really shone on Mom's face. He's so smart, follow me. Yuqiu Ci pushed her away without a word or expression. Brother, you're really amazing. The younger sister behind her, wearing a white floral dress, praised with a smile like a flower. Come in. Yuqiu Ci smiled slightly at his sister. I brought you 10,000 yuan. Cheng Sairu took out a stack of money from her bag and smiled as she handed it to Yuqiu Ci. Take it well. Yuqiu Ci didn't refuse. Don't argue with anything, don't argue with money. These money should be taken as compensation for the child support she didn't give before. Mom will buy you another phone in a few days, and it will be convenient for us to contact you when we go to school in the future. Cheng Sairu smiled happily and said, you should be able to attend Tsinghua University with this score, right? Yuqiu remained silent for a moment before speaking up, I didn't want to go to Tsinghua. Cheng Sairu's smile stiffened and she said, so where are you going? East China University of Science and Technology. If you don't go to Tsinghua University, why don't you go to some science and technology university that you haven't heard of before? Cheng Sairu frowned and said, when I went out, I would praise my son for going to Tsinghua University, but you went to a school that you haven't heard of before. Isn't that a joke for me? If you can't go to Tsinghua University, you're not worthy to be your son, right? Do you want your son to have any other use besides using it to put gold on his face? Oh my. Son, why are you so confused? You little county town has never had a student from Tsinghua University before. You're the first one, you know. Mom, stop talking. Yuqiu took the words and advised, where my brother wants to go is his choice. I didn't go to Tsinghua, people thought I was talking big and boasting. Where did you talk big? 692 points are left there. Yuqiu said. That's right. Cheng Sairu nodded and then suddenly said, but if I don't get into Tsinghua University, they don't think my son is stupid. I'm as smart as you are, isn't foolishness also as you are? Cough. Cheng Sairu coughed lightly, well. Since I entered the house, you haven't called me Mom yet. I came specifically from the city to see you. Yuqiu didn't speak his words. Autumn lyrics. Dongyang called. Suddenly, a middle-aged woman's cry came from outside. Brother called. Yuqiu Ci rushed out like a rabbit. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Shocked. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Shocked. Yuqiu quickly followed over. He doesn't have a phone at home, so Yu Dongyang always calls his neighbors and asks him and his father to answer them. Brother. Hee. I got a score today, how are you doing? Not bad, I applied to East China University of Science and Technology. Seeing her younger sister coming, Yuqiu Ci switched the phone to hands-free. Amazing. It's 9:85, right? It's still in Shanghai. It's a big city. Yuqiu Ci nodded, but his heart felt a bit sour. I can only send back 900 yuan this month. Yu Dongyang was a bit worried. I don't know if you can raise enough tuition fees. Don't worry, I did well in the college entrance examination. The school said they will reward me with some money. Really? Yu Dongyang was pleasantly surprised. Why are you lying? Don't send money home this month. You should improve your food more. Don't eat mantou and noodles every day, or you will eat yourself out sooner or later. I won't eat those anymore. I eat rice now, rice is good for hunger. I also need to eat some meat. I know. Yuqiu Ci understood that he was just perfunctory and still couldn't bear to eat meat, but these days were coming to an end. When the school pays me the bonus, I plan to have my dad and you do some small business, so you can stop working on the construction site in the future. How much bonus can you have? I don't know yet. There will be results in a few days. Anyway, whether it's in the thousands or tens of thousands, we can still manage a small business. Then let's talk about it later. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up for now. Please pay more attention to your health. It's only 11 seconds, let's wait at least 55 seconds before hanging up. Yuqiu Ci smiled sourly in his heart and said, okay. I suddenly remembered that maybe you don't have to worry about tuition fees. If you do well in the exam, my mom will definitely come to see you and even pay for your tuition. Maybe when you get excited, I'll buy you a phone to play with. How do you know? Isn't that all she has to do? She loves face very much. If you get into Tsinghua University, she would love to tell the world. If you want to take the college entrance exam, she probably doesn't even want to recognize you as your son. Ha ha ha. Yuqiu, who was lying next to her, covered her mouth and suppressed her laughter. After hanging up the phone, Yuqiu Ci said, why don't you talk to him? Yuqiu lowered her head and whispered, I don't know what to say. Just listen to his voice. Yuqiu Ci nodded and walked out of the neighbor's house before saying, then you go back first. I'll go for a walk. Yuqiu hurriedly followed up and said, I'll walk with you. Xiaoyu, let's go. Tsinghua's voice came from behind. Son, you must think carefully again. You are the first Tsinghua student in your county. Your county. Under the faint moonlight, Yuqiu Ci gently curled her lips, only marrying into the city. It's like a Chinese person who goes to the United States for a few days and then turns around and says, your country, to the Chinese people. Yuqiu turned around and returned home without saying a word. A week later, Yuqiu Ci had already spoken with the East China University of Science and Technology's admissions team over the phone, and the matter had settled. The final rewards for Yuqiu Ci include 30,000 yuan for the school, 30,000 yuan for the county government, 50,000 yuan for the city's real estate developer, and 30,000 yuan promised by East China University of Science and Technology, as well as free tuition and accommodation fees. In addition to the 10,000 yuan given by Tsinghua, Yuqiu Ci now has 150,000 yuan in hand. If this money is used to buy a house, it can buy about 3 properties in the city. If we go into stock trading, Tencent, which has just gone public, doesn't need to do anything. In just over a decade, our small goal of 1 billion yuan will be achieved. He is preparing to take out some capital and let his father and brother do business. Yu Dongyang said he wants to be with him so that the 2 brothers can take care of each other. So Yuqiu Ci chose the business location near the school's commercial street, preparing for Yu Dongyang to open a shop there. That is the place where Yuqiu Ci lived, and he is well aware that the overall efficiency of the shops on that street is very good. At that time, Yuqiu Ci also knew a wealthy owner who opened a clothing store, because one of his ex-girlfriends was the owner's daughter. Shortly thereafter, the homeroom teacher admitted and went to the school to receive an admission notice. Undoubtedly, Yuqiu Ci received the admission notice from East China University of Science and Technology. He didn't want his classmates to know that he hadn't gone to Tsinghua, so he laughed at him as a fool and stuffed the notice into his bag to hide before leaving. As she went downstairs, Yuqiu Ci saw Lin Zhuiyue with a worried face holding a notice, indicating that her school was not ideal. This surprised Yuqiu Ci very much. After thinking for a moment, he approached and asked, "Which school are you from?" Lin Jueyue glanced at him, rubbed her red eyes, and walked away quickly without speaking. Yuqiu Ci followed closely and looked at the notice in her arms. Suddenly, she felt a bit familiar and then snatched it away. Sure enough. Changning University, his admission letter was like this in his previous life. Yuqiu Ci was instantly stunned. She went to Beijing University of Technology and Business back then, but how did she come to Changning University this time? The two suddenly became face-to-face neighbors. My first choice was to attend Business University, but I wasn't admitted. Lin Jueyue muttered with a whimper. It's like this. But it's okay, Yuqiu Ci comforted with a smile. Actually, growing up is not much worse than business. That's because you don't understand at all. Lin Jueyue grabbed the admission letter and ran away quickly. I don't understand. If you don't believe me, go ask the homeroom teacher. Growing up is not as bad as business. Yuqiu Ci, did you bully Jueyue? Suddenly, a displeased voice from the boy came from behind. Yuqiu Ci knew from his voice that he met Wei Wen in an internet cafe a few days ago. I just kissed her on the mouth, what's wrong? Yuqiu Ci frowned. You. Wei Wen blushed and pointed to his nose. You're really shameless. Hee hee. Yuqiu Ci rolled his eyes and turned to leave. You're so arrogant. Let me tell you. I've been admitted to Beijing Business School. From now on, Jueyue and I will be alumni, and we are still in the same major. Yuqiu's lyrics are once again surprising. In his previous life, Wei Wen was at Changning University, and Lin Jueyue was at Beishang University. In this life, the two of them have turned around, hee hee. You must really want to know, how did I know that Jueyue applied to Beijing Industrial and Commercial University? I won't tell you. So what about you at Tsinghua? Wei Wen snorted, I'll get the month first when I'm close to the water. Yuqiu smiled and patted his shoulder, saying, goodbye. Are you still laughing? Stop pretending, just cry if you want. Yuqiu Ci ignored him and pushed his bike away. I don't know who was crying on the day he reported to school. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Stations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Stations. So it seems that there may be a very coincidental possibility. Wei Wen, who applied to Changning University back then, but this time he applied to Business University, which squeezed out Lin Jueyue. This possibility is not small, because he and Lin Jueyue are applying for the same major and have a competitive relationship. His college entrance examination scores are also 1 point higher than Lin Jueyue's. Yuqiu Ci felt very happy in her heart, but after wandering around, she unexpectedly became neighbors with Lin Jueyue again. Replacing Wei Wen with Lin Jueyue is worth it. Yuqiu Ci, who was in a good mood, headed straight to the internet cafe to see if Su Wenrun had added his QQ. After getting on the computer, Yuqiu Ci was disappointed and did not respond to the message of adding Su Wenrun as a friend. But about an hour later, good news came that Su Wenrun had approved his friend application. Yuqiu Ci immediately greeted him, so excited that his fingers on the keyboard trembled a bit. Hello. Su Wenrun. Are you? Yuqiu Ci. I will be a college student soon. I just finished the college entrance examination, and you? Su Wenrun. Oh, after discovering it was a stranger, Su Wenrun showed little interest and didn't even mean to answer his question. Yuqiu Ci felt that she might delete herself at any time, so she decided to directly mention the key points. I have good grades this year and have been admitted to East China University of Science and Technology. When will you take the college entrance examination? I need to work hard. Su Wenrun clearly had some interest and said, did you also apply to East China University of Science and Technology? Seeing her using the word also, Yuqiu Ci felt relieved. Her life trajectory did not change, and she was still at this university. Su Wenrun asked again, what is your major? Yuqiu Ci. From the computer department. Su Wenrun replied, I ordered it in advance. Yuqiu Ci believes that Su Wenrun should be more interested in himself. But she seems unwilling to continue learning, not even saying that she is also at this university, still closed off from herself. Yuqiu Ci is not in a hurry either. Anyway, she will definitely not delete herself anymore now. Also, it's good to confirm that she is still at this university. September 1st is the day when school starts. Yuqiu Ci arrived at the bus station, preparing to take a bus to the train station. Most of the students on the car are obviously more people going to study outside on this special day. As soon as he got into the car, Yuqiu Ci was both surprised and dissatisfied that Wei Wen, a dog-like person, was sitting with Lin Zhuiyue and showing flattery. To make Yuqiu Ci feel a little more comfortable, Lin Zhuiyue didn't seem to give him any good looks. Wei Wen, Chen Xiaoxiao is looking for you. She said she wants to talk to you and is waiting for you next to the fence over there. Yuqiu Ci reminded as she passed by the hallway and spat, your dog day's blessings are really great. Upon hearing this, Wei Wen was immediately very excited. The girl was also quite beautiful. However, Wei Wen, who was ecstatic in his heart, remained serious on the surface. What nonsense! I have no interest in Xiaoxiao at all. Then I'll tell her to go back. Wait a moment. Wei Wen stopped Yuqiu Ci and frowned, will this matter work for you? She's not looking for you, I need to go and explain it to her clearly. Turning his face, Wei Wenxing rushed out of the car and headed straight for Chen Xiaoxiao and next to the fence. Yuqiu Ci then sat beside Lin Zhuiyue with his bag in his hand and said, just his brain, he wants to soak you too. Lin Zhuiyue took a deep breath and said, what does it mean to soak me? Don't speak so harshly like you. What? Picking up girls is also considered vulgar language. Lin Zhuiyue ignored him with her fragrant cheeks bulging, and tilted her head to look out the window. But she didn't rush Yuqiu Ci away, at least this guy isn't as annoying as Wei Wen, who licks his face and makes noise. To take a step back, even if both of them are noisy. Then it's better to choose a more handsome one. Beside the fence. Wei Wen smiled and pretended to be a gentleman, Xiaoxiao, what are you asking me for? Chen Xiaoxiao was stunned and said, I didn't want to see you. But Yuqiu Ci just told me. Halfway through, Wei Wen realized that he had been deceived by this guy. Yuqiu Ci. Where is he? Chen Xiaoxiao was overjoyed and quickly looked around. Can you ask him to come and find me? Wei Literati was confused. I was originally thinking. If I met him at the station today, I would tell him what I was thinking. Chen Xiaoxiao lowered her head, with a hint of shyness growing on her pretty face. If we don't meet, it means we have no fate. Now that. Cough. Well. How about this? Can you help me give this letter to Yuqiu Ci? Chen Xiaoxiao blushed and took out a folding paper from her pocket. Give it to him. Give me a hammer. Wei Wen has long wished to give Yuqiu Ci a beating, how could he still be willing to help him set the red line? However, later on, Wei Wen suddenly thought of something and his face turned to a smile. Okay, let me help you a little. Thank you then, Chen Xiaoxiao said shyly and happily, but don't open it. I definitely won't read it, don't worry. Wei Wen assured. Returning to the car, Wei Wen couldn't help but feel furious when he saw Yuqiu Ci sitting next to Lin Zhuiyue. Yuqiu Ci, get up. Wei Wen was about to pull his arm as he went up. Yuqiu Ci shouted at the driver, Master. He snatches a seat. What are you doing? The driver with a strong sense of justice compared to having a loud voice with autumn lyrics. If you don't want to sit down, just get down. He snatched my seat, I was sitting here just now. Wei Wen wanted to argue. Yuqiu Ci pursed his lips and said, why don't you let others sit when you go down? What's the point? You. Wei Wen immediately turned to Lin Zhuyu for help. Zhuyu, could you tell me if this position belongs to me? I dare not speak. Lin Zhuyu shrank her body and looked aggrieved. You scared Zhuyu. Wei Wen became even angrier. Yuqiu Ci ignored him and lazily put on his headphones to listen to music. Anyway, if he dares to make trouble, the driver will teach him how to be a good person. Wei Wen, full of anger, let out a cold snort and had to sit behind Yuqiu Ci first. He opened the letter written by Chen Xiaoxiao to Yuqiu Ci, and without a doubt, it was a beautifully written love letter. Wei Wen became increasingly sour as he looked at it. Why do so many people secretly love Yuqiu Ci? However, he had already figured out a solution in his mind and quietly tore up the first line of this love letter, as it had the 3 words, Yuqiu Ci, on it. Without a recipient, everyone is a recipient. Yuqiu Ci, no matter what, I still want to thank you, Wei Wen suddenly said. After all, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known that Xiaoxiao had liked me for so long. Yuqiu Ci was a bit confused. Xiaoxiao likes you? Yeah. She gave me a love letter. Is it really fake? If you don't believe it, take a look. Wei Wen handed the love letter to Yuqiu Ci. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Feeling of Summer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Feeling of Summer. After reading the love letter, Yuqiu's lyrics were speechless. Unexpectedly, this unfortunate coincidence really caused him a marriage. But I have already directly rejected her, Wei Wen said solemnly. Since I'm not interested in her, I definitely can't delay her. This is done very well. Lin Zhuyu smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Receiving praise from the goddess in his heart, Wei Wen was ecstatic. Now she must have a good impression of him, and they will have a great chance of pursuing her again in the same school in the future. However, on the surface, Wei Wen remained quite humble. It's just right, normal men would do this. If you don't like it and still want to hang someone up, you will have to suffer retribution. As soon as Wei Wen finished speaking, he saw Chen Xiaoxiao run into the car, blushing and stuffing a note into Yuqiu Ci's pocket. If you must add me. Before Yuqiu Ci could react, Chen Xiaoxiao, who had left this sentence, had already turned around and ran off the car. Wei Wen was also stunned on the spot. Why did she come with her again? What did she give you? Lin Zhuyu secretly glanced at the note in Yuqiu Ci's hand and tentatively asked. I don't know either. Yuqiu Ci opened the note generously while speaking, and Lin Zhuyu quickly leaned in. Wei Wen should have already given you what I wrote for you. But I forgot to leave my contact information on it. If you don't hate me, please make sure to add me on QQ. Yuqiu Ci and Lin Zhuyu exchanged a glance, then turned around and stared at Wei Wen. Wei Wen had already realized something, afraid that the situation had been exposed, and negative emotions of nervousness, embarrassment, and awkwardness instantly surged in his heart. Is Chen Xiaoxiao's love letter written to you? Lin Zhuyu frowned slightly and asked. Wei Wen felt his throat a bit dry and hoarse, but sweat beads oozed from his palms. I'm almost thirsty, I'll go buy a bottle of water to drink. With this sentence thrown away, Wei Wen lowered his head and fled in the wilderness. How shameless this person is. Lin Zhuyu was obviously very angry, and she turned her head to find Yuqiu Ci staring at the note given to him by Chen Xiaoxiao with a smile on her face. I was almost deceived by this kid. It turns out that Chen Xiaoxiao's love letter was written to. Cough. Yuqiu Ci looked up and bumped into Lin Zhuyu's gaze, then tore open the note with a QQ number left by Chen Xiaoxiao. Lin Zhuyu immediately turned her head and looked out the window, with a look that had nothing to do with me. Upon seeing the situation, Yuqiu Ci put the torn piece of paper into his pocket and then tore off a corner from the love letter, tearing it to pieces. In front of Lin Zhuyu, she threw the torn fragments outside the window. I'm not interested in her QQ, Yuqiu Ci said solemnly, clapping her hands. It's none of my business whether you're interested in her QQ or not. Lin Zhuiyue didn't look back, looking indifferent. I didn't seem to say it was none of your business, did I? Lin Zhuiyue opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. Yuqiu Ci opened his newly purchased MP3 player, pulled out a pair of headphones and handed them to Lin Zhuiyue, smiling, do you listen? Lin Zhuiyue still turned her head to look out the window without any waves and said, I don't listen. Qi Li Xiang is a new album released in August. Cough. Yuqiu Ci stuffed the earphones into her ears, while Lin Zhuiyue still looked out the car window. There were a few sparrows, chattering on the electric pole, and it really felt like summer. The terminal of the car is only 200 meters away from the train station, but for Lin Zhuiyue, walking this distance is also a bit difficult. She brought a large password box, a large backpack, and a large carrying bag. Yuqiu Ci is just a backpack, quite easy. When getting off the car, Lin Zhuiyue thought that Yuqiu Ci would at least help her carry one. A little better, maybe we can help her get two. Unexpectedly, this cargo got off the car directly, even faster than a rabbit, without any intention of caring about her. Yuqiu Ci. Are you really embarrassed to get off the car directly? Yuqiu Ci turned around and said, haven't you arrived at the station yet? Lin Zhuiyue took a deep breath and a smile appeared on her pretty face. May I ask if you can help me? Sure. Yuqiu Ci agreed quite decisively, which bag is the heaviest among you? Lin Zhuiyue pursed her lips and chuckled, thinking to herself that this guy likes to tease people. Now, she's still taking the initiative to ask for the heaviest. This backpack is very heavy, thank you, Lin Zhuiyue smiled. I'll give you this backpack. Lin Zhuiyue. The city railway station looks like it was a decade ago, surrounded by old buildings and narrow streets, making the black and white memories in Yuqiu Ci's mind gradually become colorful. He stood in front of the station square carrying Lin Zhuiyue's heaviest backpack, feeling quite emotional in his heart. Wait a moment, I'll go buy you a bottle of water to drink. Lin Zhuiyue put down the password box and ran to the nearby shop. The straight snow-white calves under the knee-length skirt were quite pleasing to the eye, and Yuqiu Ci's gaze couldn't help but jump along. After a while, Lin Zhuiyue ran back, sweating profusely. The temperature of 38 degrees Celsius was really hot. Do you drink mineral water or green tea? Yuqiu Ci took the mineral water and looked at Wang Liham on the bottle, feeling a sigh in her heart. Didn't you tell Wei Wen that you were admitted to Changning University? Yuqiu Ci asked casually. Lin Zhuiyue was slightly taken aback, and Xiumei furrowed her eyebrows slightly. Why did I tell him this? Then add another sentence. I don't like him again. Didn't he ask you either? Lin Zhuiyue shook her head. Yuqiu Ci chuckled lightly in his heart, thinking that he must have wanted to surprise Lin Zhuiyue this dog day. Let me take a look at your ticket, Yuqiu Ci reached out and said. What's so nice about this? Lin Zhuiyue lifted her back of her hand to wipe the sweat off her forehead, and then took a sip of green tea before saying, it's on the outermost layer of your backpack in your hand. Yuqiu Ci opened his mouth and couldn't help but smile slightly. The two of them are on the same bus, but the carriages are different, one in compartment 7 and one in compartment 8. What time is your car? Lin Zhuiyue asked. I won't tell you. Lin Zhuiyue glared at him and angrily snatched the ticket back, saying, then you're not allowed to look at me either. Yuqiu Ci shrugged his shoulders and didn't take it seriously. In the waiting hall. The two sat quietly together, each with an earphone in their ear, listening to an MP3 player. Yuqiu Ci took out a pen and paper, wrote a string of numbers on the paper, and put them in Lin Zhuiyue's hand. This is my phone number. You can call me when you think of me. After the college entrance examination in her previous life, Yuqiu Ci never bothered her again. In this lifetime, the two of them have become neighbors in college, and it's difficult not to disturb them. However, Lin Zhuiyue's focus was clearly different, and she opened her mouth in surprise, saying, "Did you buy a phone?" Yuqiu smiled and shook the Nokia 7610 in her hand, saying, "You can come to me if you need anything." Lin Zhuiyue bit her lips, furrowed her brows, and didn't open her head. "What's the use of looking for you? You're in Beijing, I'm in Shanghai. If something really happens, can you still fly over?" "I can't say for sure." Lin Zhuiyue obviously didn't believe it, and with her fragrant cheeks bulging, she stuffed a piece of paper into Yuqiu Ci's hand and said, "I don't want it." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. A Teenager in Love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. A Teenager in Love. Yuqiu Ci didn't argue with her, unzipped her backpack, threw the note in, and reminded her, "It's here. Let it go." Lin Zhuiyue snorted, "Anyway, I'll throw it away on the train." Yuqiu Ci smiled at her and said, "As long as you don't regret it." Shortly thereafter, ticket checks began to enter the station. Yuqiu picked up her backpack and said, "My ticket is later than yours. I'll take you to the car first." "Well. Thank you anyway," Lin Zhuiyue whispered. The two of them followed the crowd side by side. Lin Zhuiyue lowered her head slightly and occasionally glanced at him quietly, with a hesitant expression. "Do you have anything to say?" Yuqiu Ci smiled. "I didn't." Lin Zhuiyue immediately turned her little head away. After a few seconds, she asked again, "Do you have anything you want to say?" "I have a lot to say in my heart, but when I reach my throat, I don't seem to know what to say, it's a bit contradictory." Yuqiu Ci turned to look at her and said, "Do you understand this feeling?" "Of course I know." "Oh no. I don't understand." Lin Zhuiyue's head immediately shook like a tambourine. Her comical and adorable face, with a slight blush, made Yuqiu Ci laugh out loud. "It's been a long time since I've seen such a shy girl. Perhaps such a girl only exists in my memories back then. My girlfriend has too much luggage," Yuqiu Ci explained to the ticket inspector with a smile, "I'll take her to the car and get off." "Then hurry up, our station has a relatively short stopping time," the ticket inspector reminded. Good Lin Zhuiyue, blushing, pulled off his arm and said, "Who is your girlfriend? Why are you talking nonsense? We have to find a reason. Then you can just say it's a friend. Are you a woman?" That's just a girlfriend. There are quite a few people on the train, which is a bit crowded." Yuqiu Ci dragged his bag ahead to clear the way, and Lin Zhuiyue pulled his clothes by the corner, shrinking her body and following behind. It took some effort for them to reach their seats. "Hurry up and get off. Otherwise, the train will leave," Lin Zhuiyue reminded. "Goodbye." Yuqiu Ci turned around and left. Lin Zhuiyue stayed for a moment, originally wanting to say two words that happened during the farewell. "I didn't expect this guy to leave so decisively." However, thinking of his phone number, Lin Zhuiyue felt a little relieved in her heart. "I don't know if I will contact him in the future, at least I won't completely cut off contact from him. Now I have a bottom line in my heart, and there is still a way to contact him if I really want to. As long as you are willing, you won't really lose this friend." Lin Zhuiyue's seat is on the aisle, and inside her is a girl who looks like a student, most likely someone who is about to enter university life. There are many people in the aisle who have station tickets and can only stand, swaying with the train. In no time, a man quietly stood next to her, slowly getting closer and closer to her, causing Lin Zhuiyue to frown frequently. And this man always rubs against her snow-white long legs when the carriage shakes. Lin Zhuiyue encountered this situation for the first time and was both surprised and afraid, at a loss. She buried her head tightly and leaned uneasily towards the seat, pulling the hem of her skirt up to her knees. She knew she should rebel loudly, but she didn't dare, not even look up at that man. But she didn't say what she was afraid of losing face. Afraid that this man is an extremely evil person. If only Yuqiu Ci were there, he would definitely help him teach this shameless person a lesson. This idea suddenly came to Lin Jueyue's mind. But he already has his life, and no one can always be by his side. Some things can only be done by oneself. Lin Jueyue took a deep breath and her face turned red with anger. She gritted her teeth, as if reminding or warning, "My boyfriend is coming over soon." "Where is your boyfriend?" Lin Jueyue was startled by the words and immediately looked up. It turned out that the person who had been using regular script to polish her oil was Yuqiu Ci. There were too many people in the hallway, and our stop time was short. "Before I could squeeze in, the car left," explained Yuqiu Ci. Lin Jueyue knew that he had just rubbed his leg against her and was teasing her, but she didn't have the heart to get angry with him. "What should you do now? Why don't you go to the next stop and buy a new ticket? I'll go straight to Shanghai. My brother works there and hasn't seen him for a long time. Since God won't let me get off the car, I'll go see him today." "Are you not going to school to report today?" "Even if I report a day later, Tsinghua won't fire me." Yuqiu Ci smiled and said, "By the way, you just said your boyfriend came. Where the hell is he?" Lin Jueyue's cheeks burned slightly, and she quickly stopped looking out of the window, with a look like "I didn't want to talk to you." "Ha!" Yuqiu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lin Jueyue was both angry, embarrassed, and angry. She lifted her little foot and lightly stepped on his foot. Hiss. 1 hour later. Seeing Yuqiu Ci standing all the way, Lin Jueyue felt a bit embarrassed and said, "Why don't we switch? I'll stand for a while." Upon hearing this, Yuqiu leaned down and whispered in her ear, "You stand here, I'm afraid the perverts in the hallway will take advantage of you." Lin Jueyue only felt his ears tingling and itching from the warm breath in his mouth, which was a strange and comfortable feeling. She pretended to rub her ears unintentionally and turned her head to look at the men next to her, feeling guilty. "But you keep standing, aren't you tired?" Yuqiu Ci patted her thighs and answered decisively, "Tired." Lin Jueyue hesitated for a while, pasted a sticker into her seat, squeezed out about 20 centimeters of space, and whispered, "Then you can sit down for a while." "This is not very good," Yuqiu Ci said as she sat down with her, feeling a bit embarrassed. Lin Jueyue's body suddenly tensed. After all, their buttocks were tightly pressed together, making it her first time having such intimate contact with a man. She could clearly feel the temperature on her face and decided to lie on the table pretending to sleep. But she couldn't sleep, especially since Yuqiu Ci would occasionally lift her body and sit inside to avoid slipping, and their bodies inevitably rubbed against each other. Lin Jueyue, lying on the table with her face covered, tightly pursed her lips, feeling shy and conflicted in her heart. Probably 7 points shy, 2 points resistant, and 1 point. Inexplicable expectation. Yuqiu Ci really likes this seat. Although the space given to him is very small, it is more comfortable than his own seat. Back then, I only thought Lin Jueyue was beautiful, but as for her legs, waist, and hips, I didn't think much about them. Anyway, young people who are just starting to fall in love. Most of them only have faces in their eyes, and as they experience more, they gradually pay more attention. Just like the current Yuqiu Ci, I found that this little girl not only has a face, but also her buttocks are really excellent, round, curly, and elastic. Hush. Don't speak, feel with your heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Stunning Dogs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Stunning Dogs. Yuqiu Ci lifted her body and rubbed it inside, while Lin Jueyue quietly moved in. Just like this, Yuqiu Ci gradually crawled into the Lin Jueyue by about 10 centimeters. A seat with a width of 30 centimeters is enough for him to sit. Lin Jueyue squeezed in too much and had to apologize awkwardly to the girls inside, saying, "I'm sorry, boyfriend, I'm really sorry." Fortunately, the girl had a good personality and smiled slightly to show understanding. After a while, Lin Jueyue turned her head and whispered to Yuqiu Ci, "Can you stop sticking so close to me? What's going on?" Lin Jueyue gently swayed her body, lowering her head with a hesitant expression. Yuqiu Ci suddenly stared blankly at the dog. It's hard to imagine that such words of tiger and wolf could be spoken from her mouth. However, seeing Lin Jueyue's conflicted expression, Yuqiu Ci quickly realized that she might have misunderstood. "Are you sweating wet?" Yuqiu asked tentatively. "Otherwise." Lin Jueyue raised a pair of bright eyes and looked at him innocently and suspiciously. Cough. This green train does not have air conditioning, only a small fan swaying overhead. Their bodies have been squeezed together for a long time, and it is inevitable that they will feel suffocated and sweat, especially the small clothes inside. "What's wrong?" Lin Jueyue continued to ask inexplicably. Yuqiu Ci directly changed the topic. "It's noon, I'm going to have a bucket of instant noodles. Do you want it? Then go ahead." Although he likes to tease Lin Jueyue, he is not interested in playing with her for this kind of straightforward joke. At least for now, it's not appropriate. He doesn't want to pollute the innocent woman of this era. In terms of gender affairs, she may still be like a blank sheet of paper. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the two of them got off in front and behind. There are many welcoming representatives from schools waiting at the exit, and a dedicated bus can follow them to the school. On this side of Chongning University, Lin Jueyue and Yuqiu Ci followed the sound. As they approached, two boys asked, "Is it from Chongning?" Lin Jueyue nodded. "Come on. Come with us." The two boys quickly approached and picked up her password box and handbag, showing great enthusiasm towards Lin Jueyue. As for the Yuqiu Ci carrying a large bag next to him, it seems that these two goods have not been seen. Lin Jueyue turned around to look at Yuqiu Ci, her nose tinged with a hint of fragrant sweat, and she smiled awkwardly with her hands behind her. "Lin Jueyue," Yuqiu said with a long focus, "promise me, don't be fooled away so quickly." Lin Jueyue. "I'll help you put your bag on the car." Yuqiu Ci smiled and got on the car. "Thank you." Lin Jueyue followed closely behind. After putting away her bag, she found a seat by the window and sat down. "Hello classmate, can I sit next to you?" The person who helped her with her bag just now asked with a smile on their face, quite gentlemanly. Before Lin Jueyue could answer, Yuqiu Ci sat next to her without saying a word. That boy suddenly looked dumbfounded. Why is this person so impolite? He glared at Yuqiu Ci, but the other person didn't even look at him. Instead, he took out a tissue to wipe Lin Jueyue's sweat and said, "Darling, I see you've been heated up." Lin Jueyue's cheeks were slightly hot, so she quickly took a tissue and wiped it herself. She was too lazy to argue that Yuqiu Ci had taken advantage of her verbally, and it was useless to say so anyway. The boy felt both sour and angry when he saw it, realizing that he already had a boyfriend and could only leave in frustration. "All right, hurry up and get off. The car is about to leave again," Lin Jueyue quickly whispered as a reminder. Yuqiu Ci smiled slightly and whispered in her ear, "My brother is not far from your school. Can you let me have a free ride?" The tingling sensation on Lin Jueyue's ears came again. She rubbed her earlobes a bit uncomfortable, and her mouth responded haphazardly. About an hour later, the car stopped at the entrance of Chongning University Library, surrounded by new student reporting offices from various departments. The young and beautiful freshmen in the car jumped out of the car, their curious eyes wandering around. The senior students warmly stepped forward to welcome the younger students to report. Of course, there are also some special senior students who, in addition to taking care of new students, also want to meet handsome or beautiful younger students. So their goals are not so arbitrary anymore, they only target new students with high looks. Junior, which department is it? A pretty girl with light makeup smiled and approached Yuqiu Ci, enthusiastically, taking his backpack. Let me help you get one, ah. Upon seeing this, Lin Zhuiyue's pretty face couldn't help but stiffen. This pretty girl made her feel a hint of hostility. Is this your girlfriend? The girl obviously noticed Lin Zhuiyue's expression and quickly asked. Lin Zhuiyue didn't say a word, just assumed it was a tacit agreement. He called her girlfriend all the way, and it's not a bad time. With a slight hum in his mouth, his small head lifted slightly, and his green cheeks made an effort to look like a hostess with pride. No, don't misunderstand. Yuqiu Ci quickly explained, she and I are just ordinary friends. Cough cough. Lin Zhuiyue patted her chest repeatedly, almost choking. What a metaphor for autumn. Seeing a beautiful girl, I won't be your girlfriend anymore. Now I'm too lazy to even pretend. The girl looked at Lin Zhuiyue's expression and looked at Yuqiu Ci, probing, do you dare to give me a contact information? Yuqiu immediately opened Lin Zhuiyue's backpack and gave her the piece of paper with her phone number written on it. My phone number. Lin Zhuiyue was completely dumbfounded, it was clearly for me. Hey, goodbye. The girl waved her hand and quickly ran away. Yuqiu Ci turned her head and smiled, didn't you want to throw it away? You don't need to do it yourself, I'll help you throw it away. Lin Zhuiyue took a deep breath, feeling inexplicably sour in her heart. She wanted to make a nonchalant appearance and say, yes, thank you for throwing it away, but she couldn't say anything. Losing his contact information, Lin Zhuiyue had a subconscious feeling that he was going to Beijing tomorrow, even though she had never had it before. The reason why Yuqiu Ci gave her contact information so decisively to this beautiful senior sister is because she was one of her ex-girlfriends back then, and she was also the one she pursued back then. Sure enough, her aesthetics have not changed. End of this chapter.